Ryan Carter grabbed a stranger's child by the wrist, spun around, and walked away from the gate, knowing that door would close behind him forever. Not because he had to. Because a 6-year-old boy was standing alone in the middle of a crowded airport, shoes untied, eyes full of terror, and nobody else stopped. That single decision cost him everything he had spent 3 years building, and gave him something he didn't know he was still allowed to want. If you're watching from somewhere out there, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The alarm went off at 4:47 a.m. Ryan didn't need it. He had been lying awake since 3:15, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom he used to share with someone, listening to the sound of a house that was too quiet for a man who still remembered what noise felt like. He sat up slowly, the way men do when their bodies have accumulated too many early mornings and not enough rest. Swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat there for exactly 12 seconds with his hands on his knees. He counted them. He always counted them. It was the only moment of the day that belonged entirely to him. Then he stood up, and Ryan Carter began the process of becoming a father again. He was 35 years old, and he had been doing this alone for 3 years, 2 months, and if you pushed him, he could have told you the exact number of days. He didn't push himself. He had learned not to, because the number felt like a wound that hadn't fully closed, and every time he poked at it, something inside him ached in a way he couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't felt it themselves. His name was Ryan Carter, 6 feet even. Brown hair that had started showing threads of gray at the temples over the last year. Not from age, his doctor had said with the kind of careful diplomacy men use with other men, but from stress. He had laughed at that. Stress. As though that word was even large enough to hold what he carried. He moved through the dark hallway toward his son's room. Lucas was 8 years old and slept the way only children can sleep, completely without apology, arms thrown wide like he was trying to catch something in a dream. Ryan stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching. He did this every morning. Not because he was worried, because it was the one thing that reset something broken inside his chest. He crossed to the bed, quietly reached down, and touched his son's shoulder. "Hey, bud. Time to get up." Lucas groaned, pulled the blanket tighter. 5 more minutes. "You said 5 more minutes 20 minutes ago." That was a different 5 minutes. Ryan almost smiled. Almost. "Up. Breakfast is in 15. I laid your clothes out on the chair." He left before Lucas could negotiate further, because Ryan had learned a long time ago that negotiating with an 8-year-old at 5 in the morning was a battle no adult had ever won. I went to the kitchen and started the coffee maker, then opened the refrigerator with the practiced efficiency of a man who had turned the morning into a military operation. He had packed Lucas's lunch the night before: turkey sandwich, apple slices, the small bag of pretzels his son inexplicably loved, and a note. Ryan always left a note. It was a habit he had started the first week after Sarah died, when he realized that Lucas was going to school every day, not knowing if his father was okay, and Ryan had decided, standing in this very kitchen, hands shaking, coffee going cold, that his son would never spend a school day wondering. The notes were small, simple. "You are the best thing I ever did. Have a great day. I love you more than pretzels," which is saying something. He folded it, tucked it in beside the pretzels, and closed the lunchbox. Then he stood at the counter and drank his coffee in 4 long pulls, the way men drink coffee when it's fuel and not pleasure. Today was different from most mornings. The rain came down harder by 10 o'clock. Ryan could hear it against the terminal windows. Not the gentle kind of rain that makes people reflective, but the serious kind, the kind that grounds planes and floods highways, and reminds everyone that the world operates on its own schedule, regardless of what any human being has planned. Oliver had fallen asleep in his chair. It happened the way children fall asleep in public, without warning, without ceremony. One moment he was narrating the movements of a baggage cart with intense authority, and the next, his head was tipped sideways against his mother's arm, mouth slightly open, completely absent from the world of adults and airports and delayed flights. Emily adjusted her arm so he wouldn't fall, and the movement was so automatic, so deeply practiced, that she didn't even look down when she did it. Just shifted, accommodated, held. Ryan watched this and felt the familiar ache of recognition. He had done that 10,000 times. He does this, Emily said quietly, not wanting to wake him. Runs at full speed and then just stops. Lucas does the same thing, except he fights it. He'll be sitting there, eyes closing, head bobbing, and if you say anything, he'll insist he's not tired. Oliver used to do that too. He stopped about a year ago. What changed? She looked at her sleeping son. He figured out that sleep was safe, that when he woke up, things would be the same as when he closed his eyes. She paused. It took a while. After James died, he'd wake up in the night convinced that I was gone too. He'd come into my room and stand next to the bed and just watch me breathe. Sometimes for 20 minutes before he'd go back to sleep. Ryan felt that land in the center of his chest, like something dropped from a height. Lucas did the same thing. She looked at him. For how long? About 8 months. Then it tapered. Now he just comes in once, stands in the doorway, and if I look up, he goes back to bed. He just needs to confirm you're still there. Every night. Emily was quiet. She looked back at her son. We don't talk about this stuff, do we? Single parents. We just do it, and then we smile at teachers and answer fine when people ask how we're managing, and we go home and do it again. Because explaining it is harder than doing it. Because most people who ask don't actually want the real answer. They want to hear that you're managing so they can feel okay about not helping. Ryan turned his coffee cup on the table. Who helped you in the beginning? She thought about it for a moment, with the particular honesty of someone who no longer felt the need to make the answer sound better than it was. My sister flew in for 2 weeks after the funeral. My neighbor brought food for the first month. After that, mostly just me. She shrugged, not bitterly, but with a matter-of-factness that was its own kind of heartbreak. People have their own lives. I don't blame them. I had my sister Diane. She was incredible. Is incredible. Ryan looked at the window. But there's a thing that happens where you can feel other people's not patience, that's not the right word, their capacity. You can feel the limit of it. And at a certain point you stop calling because you don't want to be the person who uses up everyone around them. Yes. She said it immediately with a certainty that told him she had felt this exact thing and never found the right words for it until now. Yes, that's exactly it. You stop calling because you'd rather be lonely than be a burden. And then you get very good at being lonely. You do. They sat with that for a moment. Outside, the rain intensified. A-Gate agent 2 counters down was managing a cluster of frustrated travelers with the diplomatic patience of someone paid not to show how they actually felt. An elderly man nearby was asleep over his newspaper chin against his chest, snoring softly. 2 college-aged kids were sharing one set of earbuds, watching something on a phone propped against a water bottle. Life going on. Ordinary and continuous and indifferent. What was she like? Emily asked. Ryan looked at her. Sarah. He didn't answer immediately. He turned the name over in his mind, the way you handle something fragile. Fragile, careful, deliberate. Loud, he finally said. Not in an aggressive way. In the way where she just filled a room. She laughed at her own jokes before she finished telling them. She cried at commercials and was embarrassed about it every single time, even after I'd seen her do it 100 times. He paused. She was a better parent than me. Naturally. Like it came from somewhere I had to work to reach. She could read Lucas in 10 seconds. I'm still learning to read him. I doubt that. It's true. She had this instinct. I have notes and routines. Notes and routines work. They do, but they're not the same. Emily nodded slowly. James was calm. That was his thing. Where I'd be spinning out about something, Oliver's fever, the car payment, whatever. He'd just come in and lower the temperature of the whole room. Not by saying anything profound, just by being steady. She looked at her hands. I didn't know how much I'd relied on that until it was gone. You don't realize you've been leaning on something until the thing isn't there anymore, and you're just falling sideways. And then you figure out how to stand up straight on your own. You do, but you're never quite straight the same way again. Ryan looked at her. No, he agreed. You're not. Oliver shifted in his sleep, pressing closer to his mother's side, and she put her arm around him without breaking eye contact with Ryan. Does it get easier? She asked. I know everyone says it does, but everyone who says it is usually someone who hasn't been through it. Right. He considered the question seriously. Not the way people consider it when they're searching for the comforting answer, but the way you consider something you have actually lived. It gets different, he said. There are stretches where it's genuinely easier, where you forget for a few hours. And then something catches you, a song, a smell, the way the light falls at a certain time of day, and it hits as hard as day one. But those moments get farther apart, and the stretches in between get longer. He looked at the table. So I guess the honest answer is yes, but not in the way you're hoping for. It doesn't disappear. It just gets carried differently. Emily looked at him for a long time. That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me since James died. Everyone else gives you the easy version. Because the easy version is more comfortable to say. And less useful to hear. She nodded, and something between them shifted, not dramatically, not with any particular declaration, but in the quiet way that trust shifts when two people find themselves saying true things out loud and realize the other person is receiving those things without flinching. It was almost imperceptible, but Ryan felt it. And from the way she wrapped her hands more loosely around her coffee cup and let her shoulders drop by half an inch, he thought she felt it too. Oliver woke at 10:40 with a small sudden jerk and immediately looked up at his mother with the alert, confirming eyes of a child, checking that the world was intact. She was there. He relaxed. Then he looked at Ryan with those same eyes, and something in his expression settled. Ryan was there too. I dreamed about the plane, Oliver announced. Which one? Ryan asked. Oliver pointed toward the window. The one with the orange stripe. I dreamed it could talk. What did it say? Oliver thought about this with the gravity of a person reporting factual information. It said it didn't like waiting in the rain. Smart plane, Ryan said. Do planes have feelings? About weather delays, definitely. Oliver looked out at the tarmac with new sympathy. Is your flight still late? Still late. Are you sad about it? Ryan glanced at Emily, who was watching her son with an expression he was coming to recognize, part amusement, part love, part exhaustion, all contained in the particular look of a parent who has learned that children ask the questions adults have been carefully avoiding. A little, Ryan admitted. Is it because of work? It is. Oliver considered this. My mom has to work a lot. She looks sad sometimes when she comes home. But she doesn't say she's sad. She says she's tired. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Oliver. It's okay, Ryan said. He looked at the boy directly. Your mom sounds like someone who works very hard so that you guys can be okay. That's something to be proud of. Oliver nodded. I am proud of her. Good. Tell her that sometimes. Oliver turned and looked at his mother. I'm proud of you, Mommy. Emily made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost something else. She pulled him close and kissed the top of his head. Thank you, baby. Oliver squirmed free with the efficiency of a child who has fulfilled an emotional obligation and is ready to return to business. Can I have the rest of your muffin? It's all yours. He took it and began dismantling it with focused intensity. Ryan looked at Emily over her son's head. She was still pressing her lips together, controlling something. He looked away to give her a moment. Outside, a gap appeared in the clouds. Brief, thin, a seam of actual light pushing through, and the rain softened to something fine and silver. Not stopping. Not giving up. Just pausing to catch its breath. Ryan's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. A text from Diane Lucas wants to know if you got there okay. What do I tell him? He typed back. Tell him I had to stay in Philadelphia a little longer. Everything's fine. I'll call him at lunch. Diane. What happened? Ryan, I'll explain later. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Diane. Are you okay? He looked at the question. He thought about what he had told Emily an hour ago. I will be. And whether that was still true with the revised arrival time and the missed presentation and the text from Marcus that was still sitting there unanswered in his inbox, patient and accusatory at once. He typed, "Yeah." Actually, kind of surprisingly, yes. He put the phone face down on the table. Emily had seen him looking at the phone. "Your son." "My sister checking in. Lucas is with her." "He's going to be worried that you didn't make it." "He'll be more worried about me than about the trip. He does that." "Oliver's the same way. When I have a hard day at work, and I try to hide it, he doesn't ask me about work. He asks me if I'm okay." She shook her head. 6 years old. He should be asking me for snacks and whether he can stay up late, not monitoring my emotional state. They become the people we need them not to have to be yet. They do. She pushed her cup to the side. I hate that sometimes. I hate that he had to grow up faster than he should have. You didn't choose that. Didn't I? I could have handled things differently, been softer, hidden the hard stuff better. You can't fake it well enough to fool them. They always know. I know you're right. It's just... She looked at her son, who was now constructing a miniature architecture project with the remnants of his muffin on the table entirely absorbed. Sometimes I lie awake running the math on all the ways I might be getting this wrong. Same, every night. And then morning comes, and I get up and do it anyway. Because there's no other option. Because there's no other option I'm willing to consider. She looked at him for a moment. You're a stubborn man, Ryan Carter. You have no idea. She almost smiled. I think I might have some idea. The departure board flickered again. Ryan looked up. The 5:15 to Chicago had updated to 6 Healesrow, which meant accounting for the flight time and ground transport, he wouldn't be getting home until close to 10 at night. Lucas would be asleep. He would miss another bedtime. He picked up his phone and called his son. It rang twice. Dad, the particular way. Lucas said that word, flat, factual, immediate, like he had been waiting, landed the way it always landed. Hey bud, how are you doing? Aunt Diane said your flight got delayed. It did. Are you okay? There it was. Are you okay? Before anything else. Before when are you coming home, or I'm bored, or can I have something? Just are you okay? I'm good. I'm sitting in the airport having breakfast. Did you eat real food or just coffee? Ryan blinked. He looked at Emily, who had clearly heard this through the phone, and was pressing her hand over her mouth. Real food, bud. Good. Aunt Diane says you only eat coffee when you travel. Aunt Diane talks too much. He could hear Lucas's breath. Then, did you miss the presentation? Ryan was quiet for a beat. Yeah, I did. Was it because of something bad? No, nothing bad happened. I stopped to help a little boy who got lost in the airport. He couldn't find his mom. A long pause. Is he okay now? He is. He's sitting right across from me eating a muffin. Another pause. Longer. You did the right thing, Dad. Ryan felt something press against the back of his eyes, sudden and unexpected, and he breathed through it steadily. Yeah. Yeah. Always help the lost people. That's what you always tell me. He had said that. He had told Lucas that once over 2 years ago, after a moment in a grocery store parking lot where Ryan had stopped to help a confused elderly woman who had lost her car. He had not remembered saying it as a principle. He had just said it. Lucas had kept it. You're right, Ryan said. That's exactly right. When are you coming home? Tonight, late. You'll probably be asleep. I'll stay up. You don't have to. I want to. Ryan pressed his thumbnail hard against the edge of the table and breathed. Okay. I'll come straight to your room when I get in. Okay. Lucas. Yeah. I love you. You know that, right? A pause. 8-year-old pause. The kind that processes the seriousness of a statement before deciding what to do with it. I know, Dad. I love you too. Ryan hung up. He sat with the phone on the table and stared at it for a moment. Emily was quiet. Then, he's something, isn't he? He's everything. She nodded. Oliver was now watching Ryan with the attentive, unfiltered curiosity of a 6-year-old who has absorbed a conversation through his peripheral awareness while appearing to do something else entirely. Is that your son? That's Lucas. How old is he? 8. Oliver thought about this. Is he nice? He's the nicest person I know. Oliver nodded slowly, filed this information away. Maybe we could meet him sometime. The table went very quiet. Not uncomfortably, but quietly, the way a room goes quiet when something is said that is simultaneously small and enormous. Emily looked at her son. Oliver. What he seems nice. His dad is nice. Ryan kept his expression neutral. Maybe, he said. And he meant it in the way you mean things when you say them carefully, because you sense that some doors once opened require a particular kind of readiness to walk through. But he also meant it in the way you mean things, when somewhere below, the careful part, something already wants to be true. Oliver, having delivered his assessment and made his proposal, returned to his muffin architecture without fanfare. Emily looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Emily. Neither of them said anything. But the word maybe stayed between them on the table, unhurried, open-ended, like the thin seam of light still pushing through the clouds outside, not promising anything, not disappearing either, just there. By noon they had migrated from the food court to a quieter seating area, nearer gate B14, emptied out by the delays. Relative stillness, a cluster of chairs arranged in a rough square near a charging station. Oliver had commandeered Ryan's phone to watch something with dinosaurs in it, and this had freed Ryan and Emily to talk the way adults talk when a child is nearby, but occupied freely, but with one ear always half-tuned to the background. What were you doing in Chicago? He asked. Client meeting. I'm a graphic designer. Mostly remote, but this particular client wants quarterly in-person check-ins, which I don't love flying, so every trip is a whole internal negotiation. You don't love flying, but you brought Oliver. The sitter was unavailable, and he loves airports. I thought I could manage it. She glanced at her son, who was now holding Ryan's phone with both hands and giggling at something on the screen. I managed it right up until the security checkpoint. What happened there? A man collapsed, right in front of us, just went down. He'd been standing in line. I'd noticed him looking pale, and then he was on the floor. She wrapped her hands around a fresh coffee she'd grabbed from a cart. I'm trained in basic first aid. I work from home, which means I've done every online certification course known to man out of a need to feel productive during the slow hours. I just reacted. Knelt down, got him on his side, told someone to call medical. I told Oliver to stay right behind me. And he didn't. He didn't. Not his fault. He moved to see better. He's 6. He doesn't fully understand stay right behind me as an absolute directive. And by the time medical arrived and I stood up, he was gone. She closed her eyes briefly. I have never felt anything like that in my life. Not the fear exactly. Just the disintegration. Every coherent thought I had just collapsed. Because the worst thing you can imagine had just started happening. And it was because I did the right thing. That's the part that... She stopped. If I had just kept walking, if I had just looked away from that man on the floor like everyone else was doing, he might not have been okay. I know. And Oliver was okay. Because of you. Because of you, Ryan said. You raised a kid who knew to ask for help. That's not nothing. She absorbed that. He doesn't usually talk to strangers. How was past the point where that rule applied. He made a judgment call. Smart kid. He is. She said it simply, without the elaborate decoration that parents sometimes use as a substitute for directness. Just he is. Clear, certain, foundational. You're doing a good job, Ryan said. She looked at him. He held her gaze. I mean that. Not as a consolation, as an observation. She looked away first, toward the window. Some days I'm not sure. That's how you know you're doing it right. The ones who are sure are the ones you should worry about, she laughed. A real one. The third real laugh in 3 hours, Ryan noticed. He had started counting them without meaning to. The way you notice things accumulating without having decided they matter and then realize they do. My mother keeps telling me I should be dating. She said it with the flat, exhausted tone of someone who had lost the energy to be diplomatic about a topic. She mentions it every week, very casually, very strategically, like she's just remembering it in the moment. What do you tell her? That I'm not ready. Are you? She looked at him sideways. That's a very direct question. You don't have to answer it. She was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. There are days where the idea of it sounds not good exactly, but possible. And there are days where the idea of letting anyone into what we have here feels like being asked to learn an entirely new language while already failing 2 other courses. That's an accurate description. How about you? Have you? No. He said it without hesitation. She nodded. Not ready or not wanting to be? He turned that question over carefully. Both. For a long time, both. Now maybe just... He looked for the word. Afraid of what it means. To want something again. Like it's a betrayal. Of Sarah. And of the version of myself that decided loving someone was done. That I'd had my turn. Emily looked at him steadily. That's a very finite way to think about something that isn't finite. I know. Did she tell you that Sarah? Did she tell you that you were only allowed one turn? He thought about his wife, about her voice, about the conversations they had had in the last months when she knew what was coming and refused to let the knowledge make her smaller. He thought about the last real conversation they'd had when she was already tired, in the way that has no end, and she had taken his hand and told him with the directness of someone who had run out of time for anything less. You have more love than one person can use up. Don't let it go to waste. He had not been able to say anything in response to that. He couldn't say anything in response now either. But he looked at Emily Dawson, and he said, No, she didn't tell me that. And Emily looked back at him and said nothing, because she understood that the conversation had arrived somewhere that didn't require more words. Oliver appeared at Ryan's elbow and held out the phone. The dinosaur movie ended. What did you think? I think the T-Rex should have won in the end. Spoiler alert, Emily said. Mom, he doesn't care about spoilers for dinosaur movies. He might have wanted to watch it himself. Oliver turned to Ryan with absolute seriousness. Did you want to watch it yourself? I think I'll survive the spoiler. See, Oliver told his mother. He handed the phone back, then climbed into the chair next to Ryan, not beside his mother, beside Ryan, and settled in with the unself-conscious ease of a child who has simply decided where he is comfortable. Emily watched this. She didn't say anything. But something moved across her face, complex, layered, too quick to fully read, before she looked down at her coffee. Ryan glanced at the boy sitting beside him. Oliver was already looking at this window again, tracking a ground vehicle across the tarmac with dedicated attention. Ryan turned back toward the glass too. The rain had softened again. The runway lights had come on early against the gray afternoon, and they reflected in the wet pavement in long smeared lines of amber and white. And for a moment, it looked like something entirely different from an airport, like a city seen from a distance, lit up and alive. His phone buzzed. Marcus again. He looked at the message. Henderson stayed for lunch. Mentioned your name again. I told him about the delayed flight. He said, and I quote, "A man who stops for a lost kid in an airport is a man I'd like to have on my team." Ryan. He wants to set up a call. Next week. I need you to call me back. Ryan read the message twice. He read it a third time. He put the phone face down on his knee without responding, and looked out at the amber-lit runway, and breathed slowly, letting the information settle into him, without rushing toward it, without grabbing at it the way he had learned to receive unexpected things over the past 3 years, carefully with both hands, not sure yet of its weight. Oliver turned from the window. What are you thinking about? Something good. Oliver considered this. Is it about us? Ryan looked at the boy. Then he looked at Emily, who had heard and was watching him with an expression he couldn't read and didn't try to. Not yet, he said. Oliver accepted this with a gravity that suggested he found it an entirely reasonable answer. He turned back to the window, and Ryan turned back to the runway, where the lights kept burning through the rain, steady and patient and bright. Marcus called at 2:15. Ryan stepped away from the seating area, far enough for privacy, close enough that he could still see Emily and Oliver through the crowd, and answered on the second ring. Tell me everything, Marcus said without preamble. Ryan told him. All of it. The final boarding call, the small hand on his sleeve. Oliver's face, the gate closing. He told it plainly, without editorializing, without making himself sound better or worse than he was. Just the sequence of events in order the way it happened. When he finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You know what Henderson said when I told him? You texted me. I want you to hear it out loud." He said, "A man who stops for a lost kid is a man with his priorities in the right order. Those are the people I want making decisions for this company." His exact words, Ryan. I've worked with Henderson for 6 years. I have never once heard him speak about a candidate before a formal interview. Ryan leaned against the wall near a charging station and looked at the ceiling. "I still missed the presentation. You still missed the presentation. And somehow that missed presentation did more for your candidacy than any slide deck you could have put in front of him." A pause. "I'm not saying go around missing flights on purpose. I'm saying Thursday 2 o'clock Henderson wants a video call. 20 minutes. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Ryan?" "Yeah. Whatever is happening in that airport right now, and I can tell from your voice that something is happening, don't let it make you lose focus on Thursday." "I won't. I mean it. You have a real shot here." "I know, Marcus. I'll be ready." He hung up and stood there for a moment, phone in his hand, letting the conversation settle. A real shot. He turned the phrase over. 3 years ago, a real shot meant one thing. Professional. Measurable. A salary figure, a title, a trajectory. The kind of shot you aimed at and hit or missed, and then recalibrated. Now the phrase felt wider, less specific, like the language hadn't caught up yet to what he was actually hoping for. He walked back to the seating area. Oliver was asleep again this time, fully horizontal across 2 chairs, knees bent, completely committed. Emily had put her jacket over him and was sitting in the chair at his feet, notebook open in her lap, pen moving. She looked up when Ryan sat down. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay, actually." She raised an eyebrow. He told her about Henderson. Brief, factual, no performance in it. When he finished, Emily looked at him with an expression that started as surprise and moved into something warmer. "Ryan, that's incredible." "It's a phone call. It's a phone call that exists because you stopped. It's a phone call that exists because I missed a flight. Don't do that." "Do what?" "Take the thing that went right and immediately reduce it to the thing that went wrong." She tilted her head. "You stopped for a child. A good thing happened as a result. Let the good thing be good." He looked at her. "You sound like you've had practice giving that speech." "I've had practice needing to give it to myself." She tapped her pen against the notebook. "I do it too. Something good happens, and I immediately look for the catch. Like I'm not allowed to just receive it. Like you'll jinx it. Or like you don't deserve it, which is darker but more honest." Ryan was quiet. "Does it get better? The not deserving feeling?" She thought about it. Genuinely thought about it. "I think you have to practice accepting things. Like a muscle. It atrophies when you stop using it. And when you've been in survival mode long enough, receiving feels foreign, almost suspicious." "When did you start practicing?" "About 8 months ago. My therapist gave me a specific exercise. Every morning write down one thing you're allowing yourself to have. Not grateful for. Allowing yourself to have." She looked at her notebook. "It sounds small. It isn't." "Therapist." Ryan said the word without judgment, just noting it. "You haven't?" "I went twice after Sarah died. The second time, the therapist asked me what I was feeling, and I sat there for 4 full minutes without being able to answer, and then I said tired, and she said that wasn't a feeling, and I never went back." Emily looked at him with a complicated expression. "Tired isn't a feeling." "Apparently not." "That seems like a therapist problem and not a you problem." "That's what Diane said." "Diane sounds like she has her head on straight. She has opinions on everything, and she's right about 70% of them, which is a frustrating percentage to work with." Emily laughed. And there it was, the 4th one. Ryan noticed it the same way he had noticed the others, without deciding to, without knowing yet what the noticing meant. She looked down at her notebook. He looked at what she had been writing, not reading it, Just noticing that it existed, that while he had been on the phone, she had been sitting here with her son asleep beside her, and she had been writing. Creating something. Maintaining something private and interior in the middle of an airport delay. "What are you working on?" She closed the notebook. Not quickly, not defensively, just closed it. A letter. To a client. To Oliver, for when he's older. She held the notebook in both hands. "I started doing it after James died. I was terrified irrationally, I know, but terrified that something would happen to me and he wouldn't know certain things. What I thought about. What I believed. What I hoped for him." She looked at the cover of the notebook. "So I write to him. Not every day. But when something happens that I want him to understand later." Ryan looked at her. Something tightened in his chest and didn't release. "I started doing that too," he said. She looked up. "After Sarah." "What do you write?" "Practical things. Embarrassing things." He turned his phone in his hands. "The first one I wrote was the day Lucas lost his first tooth. I wrote down exactly what his face looked like when he found the dollar under his pillow, because I was terrified that I would forget the details, that eventually the image would blur at the edges and I'd lose it. And have you forgotten?" "No, but I might have. That's the thing." He looked at the window. "Mary is it lies. It smooths things over, takes the sharp edges off. And I don't want the sharp edges off. Those details are the whole point." Emily set the notebook down on her knee and looked at Ryan with an expression that was open and careful and something he didn't have an immediate name for. "James missed so many things," she said quietly. "Oliver learning to walk. The first day of school. The way he laughs now, which is completely different from how he laughed at 3. And I grieve that. I grieve it for James, who never got to see it, and I grieve it for Oliver, who won't remember the way his father saw him." She paused. "So I write it down. Every important thing. So that someday Oliver can read what his mother saw, and maybe hear a little bit of what his father would have said." Ryan did not trust himself to speak for a moment. He looked at Oliver asleep, and small, and entirely unaware. "He's going to be okay," Ryan said. "You know that." "I'm trying to know that." "He's going to be better than okay. He already is." Ryan looked at her. He held himself together in the middle of a crowded airport and made a rational decision and asked for help from the right person. At 6. That's not luck. That's parenting. Emily pressed her lips together. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm a single parent who's been trying to produce a functional human being under pressure for 3 years. I know what it looks like when it's working. It looks like Oliver." She looked away. He let her. The afternoon moved around them gates, opening and closing announcements in multiple languages. The continuous shuffle and drag of delayed travelers, renegotiating their days. A child somewhere nearby started crying and was quickly soothed. A man a few seats down gave up on his laptop and put it away. The rain against the windows thinned to a fine mist, then stopped, then started again. Oliver woke for the second time at 3:15. This time, he came back into full consciousness with a directness that suggested he had decided something in his sleep and was now prepared to execute. He sat up, located Ryan, and said, "Can you teach me to tie a knot?" Ryan blinked. "What kind of knot?" "A real one, not the bunny ears, the one you do." Emily looked at her son. "Where did this come from?" "I want to know the right way." Oliver held out his foot. Ryan looked at Emily. She gestured with her hand, "Go ahead." Ryan leaned forward, untied the shoe completely, and talked Oliver through it slowly, with patient specificity. The way men teach boys things, which is not with warmth exactly, but with precision and repetition, and the steady message underneath that says this matters because you matter. Oliver's small fingers fumbled through the first 2 attempts. On the third, the knot held. He stared at his shoe. Then he looked up at Ryan. Again. "Until you don't need me to show you anymore." They did it 4 more times. By the 5th, Oliver's hands moved with a new confidence that was visibly different from before. Not mastery, but the beginning of it. The moment where a skill crosses over from instruction to possession. He stood up, walked in a small circle testing the shoe and returned. It doesn't feel different, but I think it's better. It is better. How can you tell if you can't feel the difference? Because it holds. That's the only test that matters. Oliver thought about this. Is that true for other things too? Not just knots. Ryan looked at this 6-year-old boy. Yeah, he said. It is. Oliver seemed to find this satisfying. He sat back down beside Ryan again in the same position and turned to the window. Emily had not spoken during any of this. When Ryan glanced at her, she was looking at her notebook instead of looking at him, and he understood that she needed a moment, and he gave it to her. At 3:45, the flight board updated. Chicago flight 6:00 p.m. Departure. Confirmed. Emily's connecting flight. She had been routed through Chicago as well, though to a different final destination, showed the same confirmation. Looks like we're on the same flight, she said. Looks like. Oliver perked up immediately. We can sit together. That depends on our seat assignments, Emily said carefully. Can we change them? It depends on whether the flight is full. Oliver looked at Ryan. Is the flight full? I don't know yet. But if it's not full, we can sit together. Possibly. Oliver looked at his mother. It's possibly, he reported. Emily closed her eyes for 1 second. Ryan kept his expression neutral. Oliver, satisfied with this outcome, went back to his window observation. They walked to the gate together at 5:15. Oliver between them, holding one bag strap on each side, his mother's tote on his left, Ryan's shoulder bag on his right, with the concentrated physical attention of a child who has been given a job and intends to perform it. Ryan had not asked him to hold the bag. Oliver had simply reached up and taken it. Neither adult commented on the arrangement. The flight was not full. A gate agent with reading glasses, and the quietly efficient manner of someone who had been doing this job for many years, looked at their boarding passes, looked at the remaining available seats, and without ceremony, rearranged them into a row window middle aisle. Oliver took the window. Emily took the middle. Ryan took the aisle. And just like that, without drama or decision, the configuration of the morning became the configuration of the afternoon in a different context. The plane pushed back at 6:05, which meant Ryan was now going to land in Chicago at roughly 7:15, which meant there was no meeting and no presentation and no Henderson in person and no resolution to the professional narrative today, except the phone call on Thursday. He knew this. He had accepted it somewhere around noon, though he hadn't consciously marked the moment. What replaced it was harder to name. Not contentment, that felt too settled for a man sitting in a middle seat, between a woman he had known for 9 hours and a 6-year-old who had fallen asleep for the 3rd time, and this time had let his head tip sideways to rest against Ryan's arm. Not happiness either. Not the performed kind. Not the kind that required everything to be resolved. Something quieter than both of those. Something in the neighborhood of here. As in, I am here. This is real. I am not missing it. He had spent 3 years being responsible, being adequate, showing up in the measurable ways that fatherhood and work required. He had done it well, or well enough, or at least with enough consistency that Lucas still laughed sometimes, and Diane still answered the phone, and the world had kept turning. But he had stopped somewhere along the way. He couldn't say exactly when, noticing the texture of moments as they arrived. He had started moving through his life with the focused efficiency of a man who cannot afford to be distracted, and the thing that got cut in the process quietly and incrementally was presence. The willingness to just be inside a moment instead of managing it. Oliver's weight against his arm was warm and entirely trusting. Ryan looked at Emily. She was reading or trying to read a book that she had not opened for the past 4 hours. Her eyes were on the page. He wasn't sure they were moving. Hey, he said quietly. She looked up. You okay? She considered the question the way she had started to consider his questions, not reflexively, not with the automatic fine that both of them had been trained to produce. I'm thinking about something James said once. I don't know why it came up now. What did he say? She was quiet for a moment. We had a hard year. Oliver was about 1, I wasn't sleeping, James was working insane hours, and we had this stretch where we were both just depleted. And one night I told him I was scared that we were losing something, between us. That survival mode was eating everything else. She looked at the seat back in front of her. And he said, "We're not losing anything. We're just in storage. The good stuff is still there. We'll get back to it." Ryan listened. "We never got back to it," she said. Not with bitterness, just with the flat factual weight of it. He died 8 months later, and I have spent 3 years trying to decide whether that means he was wrong, or whether he meant something I'm still not understanding correctly. Ryan thought about that. I thought about it with the same seriousness she had brought to his questions, because that was the exchange they had fallen into over the course of this strange day, the exchange of being taken seriously. "I think he was right," Ryan finally said. "I think the good stuff stays. I think it waits." He looked at Oliver asleep and warm against his side. "I think sometimes it finds its way back in shapes you weren't expecting." Emily looked at him. "That's either very wise or very optimistic. Can't it be both?" Something crossed her face. James would have said that. Was that his move, answering a question with a question? Every single time. It was infuriating, and somehow it always worked. Smart man. He was. She said it softly. He really was. The plane climbed through the cloud layer and broke into open air above it, sudden and full. The last light of evening spread across the top of the clouds, like something poured there, orange and still and enormous. Oliver stirred, but didn't wake. Emily looked out the window over her son's head. "It's beautiful," she said. "Yeah." She turned back from the window. "Ryan." "Yeah. I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." He looked at her. "Okay. This?" She gestured between them at the narrow shared space of the row, the sleeping boy, the day compressing toward its end. "What is this?" He didn't look away from her. "I don't know yet." Is that an honest answer or a safe one? "Both. I genuinely don't know. But I know it's not nothing." She held his gaze. "It's not nothing," she agreed. "Is that enough for right now?" She looked at Oliver, then back at Ryan. "Right now, yes." He nodded. "Okay." The plane continued west, carrying them through the long amber end of the day, and neither of them said anything more for a while. There was no need to. The conversation had arrived somewhere that didn't require further explanation, a place where the honesty was sufficient, and the uncertainty was not a problem to be solved, but a space to be inhabited. Oliver woke up when they began their descent. He blinked twice, oriented himself window mother Ryan, and settled. "Are we there?" "Almost," Emily said. He looked out the window. "The clouds are orange." "They are. That's because of the sun." "That's exactly right." He looked up at Ryan. "Did you see it? When we came through the clouds, it was really fast." "I saw it. It looked like something from a movie. Better than a movie." Oliver considered this. "Yeah," he decided. "Better." He turned back to the window and watched Chicago come into focus beneath them, the grid of lights emerging from the distance, first sparse, then thickening, then dense and continuous and vast. Ryan looked at it too. Somewhere down, a conference room had been empty at 10 this morning. A presentation had not been delivered. A version of this day had not happened, and here was the version that had. He was not sure yet which one was worth more. He thought he was beginning to suspect. At the gate, while they waited for the door to open, Oliver stood in the aisle between Ryan and Emily, with one hand on each of their armrests, and announced to no one in particular, "This was a good trip." "We haven't gotten where we were going yet," Emily pointed out. "I know, but the trip part was good." Ryan looked past Oliver at Emily. She was already looking at him. "He's not wrong," Ryan said. "He's usually not," she replied. They walked off the plane together. Oliver between them again, without being asked, as though this was already a practiced configuration, as though the geometry of it had been worked out somewhere over Lake Michigan, and all that remained now was to inhabit it. At the junction in the terminal, where their paths separated Ryan's gate toward the baggage claim, and the hotel Marcus had booked 3 weeks ago, Emily's toward her connecting flight, they stopped. Oliver, with the acute perception of a child who has understood more of the day than the adults realized, looked between his mother and Ryan with a stillness that was unusual for him. "Are we going to see Ryan again?" he asked his mother. Emily looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Emily. A beat. "I hope so," Emily said. Oliver nodded, apparently satisfied, and shifted his attention to a passing luggage cart. Ryan looked at her. "Give me your number." It wasn't a question. He had surprised himself saying it that directly with that much certainty. 3 years of holding the boundary, of not letting anything pass the careful perimeter he had built around what was left of his interior life, and he stood here in a Chicago airport and said it like a fact. Emily looked at him for one long moment. Then she took his phone from his hand, typed her number, and handed it back. She paused. "Don't wait 3 weeks and then send a message that says hey with a lowercase h." Ryan looked at her. "That would be a rookie move." "A lot of men make rookie moves." "I've been out of practice long enough that I've forgotten the rookie moves. I'll probably just say what I mean." Something shifted in her face. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Oliver tugged his mother's sleeve. "We're going to miss the connection. We have 20 minutes. "That feels fast." "It is fast. Say goodbye to Ryan." Oliver looked up at Ryan. He extended his hand. Ryan shook it. A 6-year-old's handshake, earnest and firm, with the concentrated intention of a boy who had been taught that handshakes meant something. "Thank you for finding my mom," Oliver said. Ryan crouched down to his level. "You found her. I just helped." Oliver thought about this. "Okay," he decided. "But you tied my shoe." "Both of them." Oliver looked down at his feet. "They're still tied. They will be for a while." Oliver looked up. Something in his face, open and clear and entirely without armor, moved through Ryan like a cord. "Will you call us?" Oliver asked. "Oliver," Emily started. "Yes," Ryan said. "I will." Oliver nodded once. Then he took his mother's hand and walked toward the gate. Ryan watched them go. Emily's blue jacket, Oliver's sneakers, still tied in the right knot, the two of them moving through the stream of the terminal with the particular solidarity of a small family that had learned to be whole in a reduced number. He watched until they turned a corner. Then he stood up straight, picked up his bag, and walked toward the exit. His phone was in his hand. He looked at the new contact. Emily Dawson. Below it a number. Nothing else. No note, no context. Just the number, plain and direct, the way honest things are. He put the phone in his pocket. He walked through the terminal and out into the Chicago evening, and the air was cool and smelled like rain. Recent rain almost finished, and the lights of the city were already up against the darkening sky, and he stood outside the glass doors for a moment and breathed. Not because he had arrived somewhere, but because he had left somewhere, and because for the first time in 3 years and 2 months, the leaving felt less like loss and more like motion. Like something that had been standing very still for a very long time had just quietly and without announcement begun again. And he called on a Tuesday, not 3 weeks later, not with a lowercase. Hey. 2 days after Chicago at 7:40 in the evening, when Lucas was in bed and the house had settled into its particular nighttime quiet. Ryan sat at the kitchen table with his phone in front of him and Emily Dawson's number on the screen, and he made the call. The way he had always made hard things directly before the hesitation could organize itself into a reason not to. It rang 3 times. "I was wondering if you were going to go with the lowercase hey." Ryan felt something loosen in his chest. "I told you that was a rookie move." "You did. I wasn't entirely sure you meant it." "I always mean what I say. Ask anyone who knows me. They'll tell you it's my most annoying quality." "I believe that completely." He could hear Oliver in the background, some kind of involved monologue directed at what sounded like a toy, fully committed, entirely self-sufficient. "He's been telling his dinosaurs about you," Emily said. "In case you were curious." "What's he telling them?" "That you tie shoes the correct way, and that you're going to call." He's been checking my phone intermittently since Sunday. He's been checking your phone. Every few hours, very casually, just picks it up, looks at the screen, puts it down, doesn't say anything. Ryan looked at the far wall of his kitchen. Lucas asked me this morning if the little boy from the airport was okay. What did you tell him? That he was fine, that his mom found him. He paused. Then Lucas asked if I got the job. What did you tell him? That I have a phone call Thursday that might lead to something good. And he said good, but even if you don't get it, you still did the right thing. Ryan stopped. He's 8. He shouldn't be that settled about things. Oliver told me something similar. He said Ryan lost his meeting, but he found us, so it worked out. A small pause. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just said yes and made dinner. That's the correct response. I thought so. They talked for an hour and 40 minutes. Ryan had not talked to anyone, not Diane, not Marcus, not a single human being for an hour and 40 minutes without it being about logistics or work or Lucas's schedule in longer than he could calculate. And the thing that surprised him was not that the time passed without effort, but that it passed without him once checking how much of it was gone. He just stayed inside the conversation, following it wherever it went, which turned out to be a significant number of places. They talked about work. Hers the design projects she was juggling, the Chicago client who required quarterly in-person meetings, as if video calls had never been invented, the freelance rhythm that gave her flexibility but no security. His the Ardent Solutions opportunity. The Thursday call, the career path that had narrowed considerably after Sarah's death, because he had needed to be home and available and present, and the ways in which that narrowing had cost him things he was only now beginning to fully enumerate. They talked about their neighborhoods. Her side of Cincinnati Street she described as being in that particular American in-between of not quite up and coming, but trying very hard with a coffee shop that had been good for 2 years and then abruptly changed ownership and was now mediocre in a way that felt personal. His corner of Philadelphia, where he had a neighbor named Frank, who was 73 and retired, and had opinions about Ryan's lawn, that he delivered with the unsolicited confidence of a man who had lived long enough to stop caring about social friction. They talked about the small decisions of single parenthood, the invisible logistics, the mental inventory that never turned off the constant background process of tracking school calendars and pediatric appointments, and the exact status of the household supply of Lucas's particular brand of toothpaste, because he had opinions about toothpaste that Ryan had long ago decided were not worth contesting. Oliver has feelings about pajamas, Emily said. Specific, inflexible feelings. There is a pair of pajamas with a pattern of small rockets on them that he has worn approximately 300 times, and they are falling apart. And I bought him 4 new pairs, and he acts as though I've asked him to sleep in sandpaper. Lucas has a sweatshirt. Just one, gray. 3 sizes too big because it was mine. He found it in the closet 2 years ago and has worn it as a coat, a blanket, a pillow, and on 3 separate occasions as a cape. I don't question it anymore. Was it Sarah's favorite? Ryan stopped. He hadn't thought about it that way. He went through his memory quickly, the specific image: Sarah watching a football game, pulling that sweatshirt from the arm of the couch, putting it on over her clothes. Yeah, he said. It was. Then he knows. Ryan sat with that. He never said anything. He doesn't have to say anything. He just knows. He put his hand flat on the kitchen table. You're perceptive. I'm a mother. It's not perception. It's pattern recognition built from 10,000 hours of watching a child navigate something they don't have words for yet. Is that what you'd call it? That's what it is. He didn't argue. At 9:30, he heard Oliver's voice in the background. Change register the specific shift from play into something more plaintive that meant tiredness was winning. You should go, Ryan said. He'll negotiate for 20 minutes. He will, but you should still go. She was quiet for a moment. This was, yeah. I don't usually. I know. How do you know? Because I don't either. Another pause. Thursday, she said. Let me know how it goes. I will. Ryan. Yeah, I'm glad Oliver grabbed your sleeve. He looked at his kitchen ceiling. So am I. He sat at this table for a long time after he hung up, not moving, not doing anything in particular, just sitting there in the quiet with the phone face up on the table. Emily's name still on the screen where the call timer had been. He was not sure what this was yet, but he knew what it was not. It was not loneliness, and he hadn't known until that moment how long it had been since he could say that. Jaw. Thursday's call with Henderson lasted 34 minutes, which was 14 minutes longer than scheduled. Marcus texted while it was still happening. Is it going long? Good sign if it's going long, Ryan responded after. Henderson was a man in his early 60s, compact, direct, the kind of executive who had built his manner the way craftsmen build things with deliberate attention over years. He did not waste language. He asked pointed questions and listened to the answers with the particular patience of someone who had learned to hear what people were not saying as much as what they were. He asked Ryan to describe the airport situation. Ryan described it. Henderson was quiet for a moment. You understood that you were sacrificing a career opportunity in real time. Yes. And you stopped anyway. There was a child who needed help. There were other adults present. Not stopping. Henderson made a sound that Ryan could not read over the phone, not quite a laugh, but adjacent. My father used to say that character is what you do when the cost is real, not when it's theoretical, not when it's cheap, when it actually costs you something. A pause. That's a very short list of people, Mr. Carter. I didn't think about it that way at the time. I know, that's the point. Another pause. I've reviewed your work history, the gap years when your son was young, the contract positions. I understand the math you were doing. It was necessary. It was correct. A man who walks out on a sick child or a grieving family to protect his career trajectory is not someone I want making judgment calls at this company. Henderson's voice was even unhurried. We have a senior operations analyst position that will be posted next month. I'd like you to interview through the formal process. I have to do this properly, but I want you to know that you're walking into that process as my preference. Ryan kept his voice level. I appreciate that. Don't thank me yet. It's a real interview. You'll still have to earn it. I understand. And Mr. Carter? Yes. I looked up the flight manifest. The boy you helped, Oliver Dawson. Ryan went still. Yes. His father was James Dawson. I didn't know him personally, but I know the name. He was in the industry. Logistics software. Good reputation. A pause. Small world. It is. How is the mother managing? Ryan thought about Emily at the kitchen table in Cincinnati, writing letters in a notebook to a boy who couldn't read them yet. She's remarkable, he said. Henderson was quiet for a beat. Good, he finally said. That's good to hear. And something in the way he said it suggested that the word carried more weight than its syllables contained. They wrapped up. Ryan put the phone down. He sat for a moment. Then he picked the phone back up and called Emily. She answered in 2 rings. How did it go? I'm interviewing for a senior position next month. Henderson called me his preference. He heard her breath. Ryan. I know. That's Ryan, that's incredible. It's not the job yet. Stop doing that. He almost smiled. He mentioned James, Ryan said. A beat of silence. What? He knew the name, not personally, but from the industry. He asked how you were managing. Longer silence. What did you tell him? The truth. Which was, that you were remarkable. The line was very quiet for a moment. You said that to a VP of operations you'd been on the phone with for 30 minutes. He asked a direct question. I gave a direct answer. Ryan. It's what I said to you. I always mean what I say. He could hear her breathing. He could hear in the texture of that silence something being processed, something being received. The muscle she had described the one that atrophied when you stopped letting yourself have good things being carefully, tentatively used. Okay. She finally said. Okay. When is the formal interview? 4 weeks. You'll be ready. I was ready 6 weeks ago. I know, But now you'll also be the person Henderson already decided he wants. That's a different kind of ready. You're very good at this. At what? Saying the true thing in the way that makes it land correctly. She was quiet for a moment. James used to say I should have been a therapist. He wasn't wrong. He usually wasn't. Oliver's voice appeared in the background, not the negotiating tiredness voice, the daytime voice, the one with full authority and forward momentum. Mom, can I tell Ryan about the shark? Oliver, I'm on the phone. I know you're talking to Ryan. Can I tell him about the shark? Emily made a sound of restrained laughter. Go ahead. A shuffling, and then Oliver's voice close and direct. Ryan. Hey, Oliver. I learned about sharks today. Did you know a shark has to keep moving or it dies? Ryan thought about that. I did know that. Does that seem sad to you? I think it depends on whether the shark minds moving. Oliver considered this with the seriousness it deserved. I think sharks like moving. Then it's not sad. It's just how they work. Yeah. A pause. Okay. I just wanted to tell you. I'm glad you told me. The phone shuffled again. Sorry, Emily said. Don't be. He checks to see if you're on the phone, like I said. I know, it's fine. Is it? He looked around his kitchen. The lunchbox on the counter. The folded note inside it for tomorrow. The sweatshirt that Lucas had left draped over the chair he always left things on. Emily. Yeah. I want to come see you. Not for a work trip or a connection. I want to come to Cincinnati and take you and Oliver somewhere and see what this looks like outside of an airport. Silence. He had surprised her. He had surprised himself slightly with the directness of it, though not with the wanting. When, she said. Whatever works for you. You're not going to tell me it's too soon. Is it? Another pause. No, she said. It's not. Then when works? She named a weekend 3 weeks out. Oliver had a half day at school on the Friday. She had a project deadline on Thursday she needed to clear first. Ryan marked it on the calendar on his phone while they were still talking. He had not put anything personal on that calendar in 3 years. He stared at Emily's name on the screen for a moment after he hung up. Then he went to Lucas's room. His son was sitting on the floor with a book open, not reading it, the way children sit with books when they are actually thinking about something else, and the book is a prop for the thinking. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed. Can I tell you something? Lucas looked up. Yeah. I'm going to go visit someone in a few weeks, the woman from the airport, Oliver's mom. Lucas held the book in his lap. He did not say anything for a moment. Ryan waited. Is she nice? Lucas asked. She's very nice. Is Oliver going to be there? He is. Lucas looked at the book. Is this like Are You? He stopped. Started again with the careful verbal navigation of an 8-year-old trying to ask a precise question about an imprecise thing. Is this a friend visit or a different kind of visit? Ryan looked at his son. I don't know yet exactly, but I want to be honest with you about it. Lucas absorbed this. Does she know about Mom? She does. She lost her husband too, Oliver's dad. Lucas looked up. When? About the same time we lost Mom. Something moved across Lucas's face, recognition, or the beginning of it. The understanding that other people had been inside something similar, that grief was not a room only his family lived in. Does Oliver miss him? I think so. He was very young, but yes. Lucas looked back at the book. It's okay, he said finally. If you want to go see her, it's more than okay that you tell me what you really think. That is what I really think. He looked up. Dad, I'm not going to be mad at you for having a friend. I know. Then why do you look like you're waiting for me to be mad? Ryan almost smiled. Because I've been worried about this conversation for a long time. You've been worried about telling me you have a friend. A specific kind of friend. Lucas put the book down entirely. Dad, you work really hard, and you're home every night, and you pack my lunch and you come to my games and you never miss anything important. He said this not with the performance of a child reciting virtues, but with the steady recollection of someone reporting facts. "You're allowed to have things too. Mom would say the same thing." Ryan looked at his son, 8 years old, wearing the gray sweatshirt. "When did you get so smart?" Ryan asked. Lucas picked up his book. "I've always been this smart. You just don't always ask." Ryan stood up. He squeezed Lucas's shoulder on the way out. He went to the kitchen, poured 2 fingers of bourbon, a thing he did rarely marking occasions, and stood at the sink with it looking out at the dark backyard. Lucas had said Mom would say the same thing. And Ryan knew in the deep place where he kept the things he was most certain of that he was right. You have more love than one person can use up. Don't let it go to waste. He had heard that sentence 100 times in 3 years, usually in the middle of the night when the house was quiet. He had heard it as comfort, as accusation, as challenge. He had heard it as the thing Sarah said, and as the thing he wasn't yet ready to act on. He understood now, standing in his kitchen on a Thursday night in October, beginning to be ready. He finished the bourbon and washed the glass. Cincinnati in November was bare-treed and gray-skied and entirely itself. Ryan drove from the airport in a rental car with his phone mounted on the dashboard, and Emily's address in the navigation, and a particular quality of nerves that he had not felt since he could not remember, since when, which was itself information. He had told Marcus where he was going. Marcus had been quiet for a second. "The woman from the airport." "Yes. You're going to Cincinnati to see the woman from the airport." "Yes, Marcus." "After one conversation on a plane and a bunch of phone calls." "Correct." Ryan. "What?" "I'm not saying anything. I'm just—" A pause. Sarah would be relieved. Ryan had not answered that. He had put the phone down. He drove through streets he didn't know, toward a house he had never seen, and when the navigation announced his destination in 200 feet, he felt something in his chest rise toward his throat. He sat in the parked car for 30 seconds. He had done this before, sat in cars, gathering himself before difficult things. Before Sarah's hospital appointments in the last months. Before the conversation with Lucas about death that no parent ever feels prepared for. Before his first day back at work after the funeral. He sat in the car. Then he got out. The front door opened before he reached the porch. Oliver came through it at full speed, not running exactly, but walking with an urgency that served the same function. He was wearing the rocket pajama pants at 3 in the afternoon over a regular shirt, as though the compromise had been negotiated, and his face had the uncomplicated joy of someone for whom the arrival of a waited-for thing is simply good. "You're here," Oliver said. "I'm here." "Mom said you'd be here at 3. It's 3. "I try to be punctual." Oliver looked at him with the alert assessment of someone confirming that a memory matches reality. "You look the same as in the airport." "Is that good or bad?" "Good. I wasn't sure if you'd look different outside." "Do most people?" Oliver considered. "Some people look different in real life than I remember. But you look the same." "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is one." Emily appeared in the doorway. She was in jeans and a dark green sweater, hair down, instead of the slightly disheveled pulled back of the airport day, and she looked. Ryan searched for the word and found it settled. More settled than the airport. More interior. Like a person in her actual life, rather than a person navigating a crisis. She looked good. He was aware of thinking this, and did not try to unthink it. "You found it okay?" she asked. "GPS is a remarkable technology. Oliver's been checking the window since 2:30. "I checked once," Oliver said with dignity. "You checked 4 times. "I checked once 4 times. Ryan looked at Emily. Emily pressed her lips together. "Come in," she said. He followed them inside. The house was the way he had imagined it, without meaning to imagine it organized, but lived in the particular texture of a home, where one adult was managing everything, and had gotten very good at prioritizing. Oliver's drawings were on the refrigerator. A basket of laundry sat folded, but not yet put away on the couch. There was a coffee maker on the counter that had clearly been used twice already today. A shelf of books with one that was clearly mid-read pulled slightly forward from the others, saving its place. Ryan noticed all of it. He filed it away, not analyzing, just receiving. "Coffee," Emily asked. "Please." "Oliver, will you go put on real pants?" Oliver looked down at his pajamas with the expression of a person encountering an unexpected and unreasonable obstacle. "These are comfortable." "They're pajamas." "Comfortable pajamas." "Real pants. Go." Oliver looked at Ryan. "This happens a lot," he said. "The pajama debate. The those aren't real clothes debate. I have it a lot. I have a version of this with my son about a sweatshirt." Oliver's eyes sharpened with interest. "What kind of sweatshirt?" "Gray. Old. Too big for him." "Does he love it?" "Deeply." Oliver nodded with the gravity of someone recognizing a kindred spirit he has never met. "Lucas sounds like a good person." "He is." Oliver appeared to make a decision. "Okay," he said to no one in particular, and went toward the hallway in the deliberate way of a child who has accepted an outcome without fully surrendering to it. Emily turned to the coffee maker. Ryan sat at the kitchen table. "He's been talking about Lucas," she said. "Oliver, since you told him about the sweatshirt thing, he keeps asking if they'll meet." She turned. "I told him we were taking it one thing at a time." "That's the right answer. Is that what you're thinking too? One thing at a time." He looked at her. "I'm thinking that I drove from the Philadelphia airport this morning to sit in your kitchen, which is not nothing." She held his gaze. "No," she said. "It's not." Oliver returned wearing jeans and the same shirt which he had tucked in slightly as evidence of effort. He sat at the table across from Ryan and put his chin in his hands. "Where are we going?" he asked. "That depends on what you want to do," Ryan said. "Can we do something outside?" "Oliver, it's 40 degrees, Emily said. "Ryan doesn't look like he minds the cold." Ryan looked at Emily. "I don't mind the cold." She gave him a look that said, "You have no idea what you've just done." They spent the afternoon at a park that Oliver selected with the authority of someone who had been considering this decision for 3 weeks. Ryan pushed Oliver on the swings, higher, the full arc. Oliver demanding more each time with the absolute trust of a child who has decided that the person pushing is not going to let him fall. Emily sat on a bench 20 feet away, watching. Ryan caught her eye once mid-push Oliver airborne and laughing, and she did something he didn't expect. She mouthed 2 words. He read them clearly. "Thank you." He shook his head slightly. "Meaning, don't." She tilted her head. "Meaning, I need to." He looked back at Oliver. He understood both of those things at once, her need to say it and his resistance to it, and the fact that they could have that entire exchange without speaking, which was itself something. Which was the kind of thing that took most people years to build, and some people never managed at all. After the park, they went to a diner that Oliver also selected a booth, red vinyl laminated menus, and Oliver ordered pancakes for dinner with the confidence of a person who has identified a loophole and intends to use it. "It says breakfast all day," he told Ryan, as though anticipating objection. "I wasn't going to argue. Mom sometimes argues." "Mom is right that pancakes are a breakfast food," Emily said. "But I have stopped fighting this particular battle." "Because I always win," Oliver said. "Because there are more important battles," Emily corrected. Oliver considered this. "That's the same thing," he decided. Ryan ordered the same thing as Oliver. Emily looked at him. "You don't have to do that. I like pancakes." You ordered them to make him feel like he made a good choice. Both things can be true. Emily looked at Oliver. "I like him," Oliver said, pointing at Ryan with his fork. "I noticed," Emily replied. "Do you like him?" Ryan watched the side of Emily's face, the slight color that moved into her cheek. "Oliver? I'm just asking. That is not a question you ask people." "Why not?" "It's a real question." Ryan looked at his coffee. Emily looked at her son. "Yes," she said finally. Quiet. Direct. not making a performance of it. Oliver seemed satisfied. He returned to his pancakes. Ryan looked out the diner window at the street where the November evening was settling in. Cold still the particular American stillness of a suburb on a Friday night. He was in Cincinnati. He had been here for 4 hours. There was nowhere else he near her kitchen table with tea she made because she said she was too tired for wine to be worth it. And they talked in the low-register way that comes at the end of a full day when the performing is over, and what remains is just the thing itself. "How do you feel?" she asked. "About today. About all of it." He turned the mug in his hands. "Like someone opened a window I forgot existed." She looked at him. "That's a very specific image." "It's the accurate one." She looked at her own mug. "James used to say that grief was like a house where someone closed all the windows, and that you forgot eventually what the air felt like from outside." She paused. "I always thought that was too poetic to be useful. And now I think he was completely right, and I didn't understand it until I felt a window open." Ryan met her eyes. The kitchen was quiet. Oliver asleep down the hall. The whole house breathing. "Emily." "Yeah. I'm not moving fast. I want to be clear about that. I'm not trying to rush anything or resolve anything or make it into something it doesn't choose to be on its own. I know. But I'm not going to pretend that I drove here just to see a friend." She held his gaze. "I know that too." Okay. He looked at her across the table, this woman who wrote letters to her son in a notebook, who bargained over eggs, who said true things when it would have been easier to say comfortable things, who had laughed 4 times in one airport day, and who he had counted each one without knowing why until later. "I'd like to do this again," he said. "Bring Lucas next time. See what that looks like." Her face did the thing, the complicated layered thing, that he was slowly learning to read. "Yes," she said. "I want that too." "Then we'll do that. We'll do that." He drove back to the hotel at 10:30 through streets he was beginning to recognize, and he sat in the parking lot for a moment before going in. He called Diane. She answered on the first ring, which meant she had been waiting. "How was it?" "Good. Just good." He thought about Oliver on the swings airborne and laughing. Emily's face across the diner table, the 2-mouthed words in the park. The kitchen with the half-read book and the coffee maker and the drawings on the refrigerator. Oliver asleep down the hall while 2 tired adults talked at a table and didn't pretend to be anything other than what they were. "Really good," he said. Diane made a sound that was essentially the entirety of "I told you so," compressed into a single syllable, and the grace of it was that she left it there. Didn't elaborate. Didn't gloat. "Go get some sleep," she said. "And Ryan." "Yeah." "She sounds like a good one." He looked at the hotel entrance. "She is," he said. He meant it the way he meant everything, completely. Today Ryan had a flight to catch. The job had come through his colleague Marcus Webb, a man Ryan had known since before Lucas was born, back when Ryan still had a wife and a future that felt like something he could actually count on. Marcus worked in the corporate training division of a mid-sized logistics company called Ardent Solutions. And 3 months ago, he had recommended Ryan for a contract position that could, if Ryan performed the way Marcus believed, he would turn into something permanent. Not just permanent. Senior. A real title. Real benefits. Real money. The kind of money that meant Lucas could go to summer camp without Ryan doing mental arithmetic at the kitchen table on a Sunday night. The kind that meant a check engine light didn't turn into a 3-day anxiety spiral. The kind that meant Ryan could look at his son and say, even if only to himself, "I built something. I kept us standing." The opportunity required a presentation. In person. In Chicago. Ryan had prepared for 6 weeks. He had the slides memorized. He had practiced the delivery in front of the bathroom mirror at 11 at night after Lucas was asleep, adjusting his posture, watching his own eyes, making sure he looked like a man who deserved to be taken seriously, and not like a man who was barely holding it together with caffeine and stubborn love. He was ready. The flight was at 7:15 a.m. from Philadelphia International. He had calculated the timing down to the minute. Drop Lucas at his sister Diane's house by 6. Drive to the airport. Park in the economy lot, not the closer one, the economy lot, because the difference was $18 and $18 was $18. Check in. Clear security. Board. Simple. He had built the entire week around this one day. Dad? Lucas appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing one sneaker and holding the other, staring at it with an expression of deep philosophical grievance. The lace is broken. Ryan looked up from his phone where he had been checking the flight status. Which one? The one I'm holding. Ryan set his phone down, went to the closet in the hallway where he kept a small basket of household emergency supplies, because single fathers become people who keep small baskets of household emergency supplies, pulled out a replacement shoelace, and returned to the kitchen. He crouched down, threaded the lace through the eyelets with practiced hands, tied it. There. Lucas looked at the shoe, then at his father. You didn't use the bunny ears method. Because the bunny ears method comes untied. Mom used the bunny ears method. The kitchen went quiet. Ryan stayed crouched for 1 second longer than he needed to. Then he stood, handed Lucas the shoe, and said with more steadiness than he felt, Your mom had a lot of methods that were better than mine, but this one holds longer. Come eat. Lucas put the shoe on without another word, and Ryan turned to the stove so his son wouldn't see his face. He dropped Lucas at Diane's house at 6:04. His sister met them at the door in her bathrobe holding a mug, and gave Ryan a look that only older sisters can give, part assessment, part warmth, part. You look exhausted, but I'm not going to say that because you already know. Call me when you land. I will. And eat something on the plane, not just coffee. Diane. I'm serious, Ryan. You look like a strong wind could take you out. He kissed the top of Lucas's head. Be good, I'll call tonight. Lucas grabbed his arm before he could turn away. You're coming back tomorrow, right? Tomorrow night. I'll be there when you wake up Saturday. Promise. Ryan looked at his son's face. 8 years old and still checking. Still making sure the last person left wasn't about to disappear. I promise, Bud. He drove to the airport with the radio off, hands at 10 and 2, running the presentation in his head. Slide 1, market overview. Slide 2, the problem we're solving. Slide 3. His phone buzzed. Marcus. He answered through the car speakers. Tell me you're already at the airport. Parking now. Good. Listen, Henderson's going to be in the room. The VP of Operations. I wasn't sure he'd clear his schedule, but he just confirmed. Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. Henderson himself. Which means this isn't just a contract pitch anymore, brother. This is a full evaluation. You nail this today, you could be looking at a real offer by end of month. I understand. You ready? Ryan pulled into the economy lot, found a space, and sat for a moment with the engine running. Yeah, I'm ready. Don't let me down, Carter. He said it like a joke. It didn't land like one. Ryan turned off the engine, grabbed his bag from the back seat, and walked toward the terminal. The airport was loud in the specific layered way that major airports are loud. The kind of noise that has texture, that pushes against you, that makes you feel slightly smaller than you did when you walked in. Ryan moved through with his head down and his shoulder bag tight against his ribs, checking the departure board as he passed beneath it. Philadelphia to Chicago. Gate B-22. On time. Boarding in 40 minutes. He was going to make it. He cleared security in 11 minutes. TSA. Pre-checked the one luxury he allowed himself, justified purely on the math of time saved, and walked at pace toward the B concourse. His phone said 6:49. Boarding would begin at 6:55. He had a coffee in his hand that he had grabbed from a cart without stopping, already lukewarm, already half consumed. He passed a family unloading luggage from a cart. A couple arguing quietly near a charging station. A businessman with a phone pressed so hard against his ear, it looked like it might fuse to his skull. He was 40 feet from gate B-22 when he heard the final boarding announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final boarding call for Flight 1847 with service to Chicago O'Hare. All remaining passengers, please proceed to gate B-22 immediately. Ryan moved faster. I was 20 feet away when he felt it. A small hand. On his jacket sleeve. Grabbing. Not tapping. Grabbing. The way children grab when they are past the point of politeness, past the point of hoping someone will notice on their own, past the point of anything except desperation. He stopped. He turned. A boy. 6 years old, maybe. Brown hair in desperate need of a cut falling across a forehead above eyes that were wide and red-rimmed and full of the specific terror that belongs only to a child who has lost sight of their parent in a crowd and cannot find them again. His shoes were untied. Both of them. Howe was standing completely alone in the middle of one of the busiest corridors in the terminal, and every single adult around him was moving heads down forward, because that is what airports do to people. They create tunnels of singular purpose, and anyone who falls outside that tunnel becomes invisible. The boy had been invisible. Until he grabbed Ryan's sleeve. "Excuse me." His voice was barely audible above the terminal noise. Barely. "Can you help me find my mommy?" Ryan stood there. The gate was closing. He could hear it in the announcement. He could calculate it. He had 40 seconds, maybe 60, before that door shut, and the jetway disconnected, and 3 years of sacrifice and 6 weeks of preparation became a phone call to Marcus that he did not know how to make. He looked at the gate. He looked at the boy. And he did not think about it for as long as he would later tell himself he did, because the truth was that when Ryan Carter saw a frightened child standing alone, something in him that was older and more fundamental than career ambition made the decision before his conscious mind had a chance to weigh in. He set his bag down on the floor. He crouched to the boy's level. "Hey, I've got you. What's your name?" The boy swallowed hard. "Oliver." "Okay, Oliver, I'm Ryan. I'm going to help you find your mom. Can you tell me the last place you saw her?" Oliver's chin trembled. He was fighting the cry with everything a 6-year-old had. "By the place where you put your bags through the machine." "She stopped because a man fell down, and she went to help him, and then I couldn't see her anymore, and I walked to find her, but I got lost and I—" He broke. Not dramatically. Not the way children cry in movies. He broke the way real children break when they've been holding it together past their limit quietly, with his whole face tears coming fast and silent. Ryan reached out and put one hand on the boy's shoulder. Hey, look at me." Oliver looked up. "You did the right thing. You asked for help. That was smart. We're going to find her right now. Okay? She's looking for you right now, I promise." "How do you know?" "Because I'm a dad. And if my son was lost in an airport, I would burn this entire building down to find him." Something in Oliver's face shifted slightly. Not a smile. Not yet. But something. "Okay," he said quietly. Ryan stood up. He looked one final time toward gate B22. The door was closed. He pulled out his phone, called the airline's customer service number, was put on hold, and he stood there in the corridor holding Oliver's hand while hold music played in his ear, and he felt something complicated move through him. Loss. Yes. Frustration. The sick dropping sensation of a door slamming shut. But underneath all of that, quieter and more durable something that felt almost like peace. Because he knew the way men know things they can't explain, that he had made the right call. They started at the security checkpoint. Ryan held Oliver's hand and moved steadily through the terminal, not rushing because rushing scared children, and he knew this from experience, but moving with purpose, checking faces, scanning. "What does your mom look like?" "She has brown hair, kind of long. She was wearing a blue jacket." "Okay. Does she have a phone?" "She does, but I don't know her number. I know our home number." "That's good too. We'll use that if we need to." Ryan flagged down an airport staff member near the security exit, a woman in her 40s with a radio clipped to her vest, and the practiced calm of someone who had handled this situation before and explained what had happened. The staff member, whose name badge read. Patricia, knelt down to Oliver's level with a warmth that Ryan appreciated. "What's your mom's name, sweetheart?" "Emily Dawson." Patricia spoke into her radio, gave the description, and smiled at Oliver. "We're going to make an announcement. Your mom is going to hear her name and come right to us. Does that sound good?" Oliver nodded. Patricia looked up at Ryan with a quiet acknowledgement. Can you stay with him until she gets here? Absolutely. He was already staying. It wasn't a question that required thought. They waited near the security exit. Oliver standing close enough to Ryan that their arms were touching. After 3 minutes that felt longer than they were, Ryan felt Oliver's small hand slide into his. He didn't comment on it. He just held on. They heard her before they saw her. Not words, just sound. The sound of a woman running, which has its own particular pitch when the running is propelled by fear. The kind of sound that cuts through airport noise, because desperation has a frequency that human beings are wired to hear. She came around the corner, and her eyes found Oliver before anything else registered, and she crossed the remaining distance between them with a speed and a singular focus that made everything else in the corridor irrelevant. Oliver. She dropped to her knees on the airport floor and pulled him against her with both arms holding on the way. Parents hold children when the holding is about something much larger than the moment, about all the things that could have happened and didn't, all the distance that could have grown and didn't, all the fear that needed somewhere to land. Oliver wrapped his arms around her neck and finally let himself cry the way he'd been holding back. She let him. She didn't say it's okay. She didn't say you scared me so badly. She didn't say any of the things people say when they're managing their own fear at the expense of the child's. She just held him. Ryan stood a few feet back and watched this, and something behind his sternum contracted in a way he hadn't expected. After a moment, Emily Dawson looked up. She was younger than he had expected, though he couldn't have said why he expected anything. Mid-30s maybe. Brown hair, as Oliver had described, slightly disheveled now. A blue jacket. Eyes that were still wet, but had shifted from terror into the specific exhaustion that follows the end of a crisis, the kind of collapse that happens in the body when the adrenaline stops and reality settles back in. She looked at Ryan, and then she looked at his hand where Oliver's had been, and she understood without being told what had happened. You found him. He found me, actually. Kid's smart. He asked for help. She stood up, keeping one hand on Oliver's back. Did you? She stopped, looked at his carry-on bag and his boarding pass still visible in his jacket pocket. Were you trying to catch a flight? It's fine. It's not fine. Please tell me you didn't miss your flight because of... It's fine, Ryan said again, with a finality that wasn't cold, but was clearly not negotiable. The important thing is that he's safe. She stared at him for a moment with an expression he couldn't entirely read. Part gratitude, part guilt, part something that looked like disbelief. Like she was trying to determine whether he was real. I'm Emily. Ryan Carter. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. I did what anyone would do. She almost said something in response to that. He could see it, the words forming and then stopping. Because she knew the way adults who have been in the world long enough know that what he said was not true. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone does stop. Most don't. Instead, she said, Are you going to be able to get another flight? Ryan pulled out his phone. The screen showed 2 missed calls from Marcus and a text that read, Where are you? They're boarding. He looked at the airline app. The next flight to Chicago departed at 2:40 p.m., 7 hours from now. The presentation was at 10 a.m. He did the math. He called Marcus. It rang twice. Ryan, what happened? They just closed the door. I missed it. Silence. You missed it. I missed the flight. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything. Is there any way to push the presentation? Henderson's already in the building, Ryan. He flew in this morning. I can't. A pause. A sound like Marcus pressing his hand to his forehead. I cannot reschedule this. I have no leverage to reschedule this. Henderson doesn't reschedule. Ryan stood very still. Then I'll connect. Let me see if I can get to Chicago by noon. It's a first quarter review, not a dinner meeting. By noon it's over and Henderson has moved on to the next thing. I'm sorry. Marcus lowered his voice. I went out on a limb for you, brother. I told them you were dependable. Ryan absorbed that. I know. What happened? Ryan looked at Oliver, who was watching him with wide eyes from the safety of his mother's side. I'll explain later. He hung up. He stood there for a moment with his phone in his hand, and the weight of what had just happened settling into him like water through fabric, slow, thorough cold. 3 years. 3 years of early mornings and late nights and lunches, packed and presentations rehearsed in bathroom mirrors. 3 years of telling himself that he was building toward something, that the sacrifice had direction, that if he could just hold on long enough, then the chapter would change, and Lucas would have stability, and Ryan would have room to breathe. 3 years toward a door that had just closed. Hey. He looked up. Emily was watching him. Are you okay? He almost said yes. The word was right there. Automatic. Men his age, men who had been raised to carry things quietly and keep moving, had yes ready at all times. Instead, he said, I will be. Which was different. Which was honest. She looked at him steadily. That was an important flight. It was. And you still stopped. He shrugged. Not dismissively. More like a man who had made peace with the decision and didn't need the credit for it. He needed help. Emily looked at her son, then back at Ryan, and she said something that surprised him. You're a father, aren't you? I am. How old? 8. She nodded like something made sense to her now. My husband used to say that once you have a kid, you can't see a child in trouble and keep walking, like it rewires something. Ryan considered that. He was right. I was right about a lot of things. She said it quietly, and there was something in her voice, not grief exactly, but the particular residue of grief. The kind that doesn't make you cry anymore, but shows up in the way you say certain words. Ryan noticed it. He didn't push on it. Where are you headed? She asked, changing the register. Chicago. Was. Business. Presentation. Possible job offer. And now I wait for a 7-hour layover and figure out what I'm going to tell my boss. She was quiet for the moment. Then, let us buy you breakfast. Ryan looked at her. That's not necessary. It's the least we can do, unless you have somewhere to be. He almost laughed. It wasn't funny exactly, but there was a particular absurdity in the question, unless you have somewhere to be, that landed somewhere adjacent to humor, in a way he hadn't felt in longer than he could pinpoint. Not for 7 hours. She held out her hand. Then come. Oliver already told me he likes you, and he's a very difficult critic. Ryan looked at the boy. Oliver, who had stopped crying, who was now looking at Ryan with the open, uncomplicated trust that children extend to the people who show up when they're needed, raised his chin slightly. I told her you were nice, Oliver said. And also that you tie shoes the right way, not the bunny ear way. Ryan blinked. Something cracked open in his chest. Something small. Something careful. What's wrong with the bunny ear way? Emily asked, looking between them. It comes undone, Ryan said. He's right, Oliver agreed, and Emily Dawson laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one, the kind that catches a person off guard and sounds like relief, and just for a moment standing in the middle of the loud, indifferent, rushing terminal. Something that had been wound tight in Ryan Carter's chest for 3 years and 2 months, loosened by the smallest degree. He picked up his bag. He followed them toward the food court. He had no idea walking through those doors with a woman he had known for 12 minutes and a boy whose shoes he had not yet tied, that the morning he would remember for the rest of his life had only just begun. The food court was a particular kind of noisy, different from the terminal flatter dense, with the smell of fried food and industrial coffee. They found a table near the window that looked out onto the tarmac, and Oliver immediately pressed his forehead against the glass to watch the ground crews and the luggage carts and the slow, deliberate choreography of aircraft being prepared for flight. He's obsessed with planes, Emily said, watching him. Has been since he was 3. Smart kid. Planes are worth being obsessed with. She smiled at that and wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Ryan watched her for a moment without being obvious about it, the way people study other people when they sense something familiar in a stranger, something they can't name but recognize. Is he always that composed? He asked. He held it together for a long time before he cried. That's Oliver. He's... She paused. He's older than he should have to be, if that makes sense. It made complete sense. My son's the same. She looked at him. Ryan didn't elaborate immediately. He turned his coffee cup once on the table. Lucas lost his mother 3 years ago. He was 5. And ever since then he's had this thing where he stopped, started again. He doesn't make demands. He's careful about asking for things. Like he's aware at some level that there's only one of me and he doesn't want to use too much. Emily was very still. How old is he now? 8. She looked back at Oliver, who had fogged up a section of the window and was drawing something in it with his finger. Oliver was 3 when his father died. Ryan looked at her. She met his eyes, and neither of them said anything for a moment, because there was nothing adequate to say. But the silence had a quality that was different from awkward silence, different from polite silence. It was the silence of 2 people who had arrived at the same geographic location from very different roads and had just noticed that the landscape looked the same from both directions. How long ago? Ryan finally asked. 3 years. He nodded once. She nodded once. And that was the exchange that cost both of them nothing and said everything. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry too. Oliver turned from the window. Mommy, can I get the pancakes? Emily pulled herself back into the present with the practiced ease of a single parent. If you eat the eggs too. What if I eat half the eggs? What if you eat 3/4 of the eggs? Oliver considered this with serious intent. Deal, he said, and turned back to the window. Ryan watched this small negotiation and felt something in him relax that he hadn't known was clenched. The automatic fluid ease of a parent bargaining with a child, the way it required complete presence, complete willingness to engage in a world that was exactly the size of a 6-year-old's concerns. He had done it this morning over a shoelace. She had done it just now over eggs. There was a rhythm to it that was entirely its own, and only people who lived that rhythm every day could hear the beat. Does he have anyone? Ryan asked. Family, help. My sister visits when she can. She's in Boston. Emily lifted her coffee. Mostly it's the 2 of us. Same. My sister lives 20 minutes away. She takes Lucas when I travel. Is this your first trip since Sarah? Yes. She heard the name land. Didn't look away from it. My first time traveling with Oliver since James. I almost didn't come. But there's a client who needed an in-person. She stopped. I'm sorry. This is a very heavy conversation for a stranger in an airport. I don't mind heavy. She looked at him with something that might have been surprise. Most people do. Most people haven't been training for it as long as we have. She laughed again. Brief, real. True. Oliver came back to the table and climbed into his chair with the gravity of someone conducting important business. Dad, he said to Ryan. Then stopped himself, his eyes going slightly wide at his own mistake. His cheeks flushed pink. I didn't mean I was going to say. It's okay, Ryan said with a steadiness so immediate and complete that Oliver blinked. I don't know why I said that. You can call me Ryan. Oliver looked at him. Okay, he said quietly. But neither Ryan nor Emily commented on what had just happened. What the boy had said by accident. What he had revealed by accident. The food arrived. They ate. Outside the window, a plane taxied slowly toward the runway, and Oliver narrated its every movement with the authority of a 6-year-old who had decided that planes were worth understanding completely. And Ryan Carter, who had lost everything he had spent 3 years building that morning, sat across from a woman he had known for less than an hour, and ate breakfast, and listened to her son talk about aircraft engines, and felt for reasons he could not have fully articulated less alone than he had felt in 3 years and 2 months. Not better, not healed, not whole, just less alone, which for the moment was enough. The weather report came across the airport speakers at 9:15. A front moving in across the Great Lakes region. Strong enough to delay incoming traffic at O'Hare. Strong enough to cascade into departing flights from Philadelphia. The board flickered. Flight delays across most of the B concourse, including the 240 to Chicago. Emily looked at the board, then at Ryan. Looks like neither of us is going anywhere for a while. Ryan stared at the updated departure time. 5:15 p.m. He pulled out his phone. Marcus had sent 3 more texts. The most recent one said, "Henderson asked who you were. I covered for you. Call me when you can. We'll figure something out." He typed back, "Thank you. I'll explain everything. I'm sorry." He put the phone away. "Are you okay?" Emily asked. He looked out the window at the slate-colored sky pressing down against the tarmac. "My wife used to say that the worst days teach you something the good days can't," he said. "I used to think that was just something people say to make hard things bearable. And now..." He looked at her. "I'm still deciding." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My husband used to say that too. Almost exactly that." Ryan looked at her. Emily looked back at him. Outside, the first gray drops of rain began to streak the terminal windows. Oliver pressed his hand to the glass and watched them run. And nobody moved. Because there was nowhere to go. And because, though neither of them would have admitted it that morning, neither of them quite wanted to. The formal interview with Henderson happened on a Wednesday morning in December in a conference room on the 14th floor of Ardent Solutions' Chicago office that smelled like fresh paint and old ambition. Ryan had prepared the way. He prepared for everything important thoroughly, without fanfare, alone at the kitchen table after Lucas was in bed. He had reviewed the company's operational structure, their logistics model, the gaps in their mid-tier management that the senior analyst position was designed to address. He had prepared answers to questions he anticipated and frameworks for questions he couldn't. He had done it all with the focused, methodical competence of a man who had learned in the hardest possible way that preparation was the one variable entirely within his control. He walked into that room, and he was ready. The interview lasted 50 minutes. Henderson asked hard questions, not hostile, but real, the kind that required actual thought rather than rehearsed answers. He asked Ryan about a specific operational failure in a company he had consulted for 2 years prior, how he had handled it, what he would do differently. He asked about leadership under pressure, about making decisions with incomplete information, about managing teams through uncertainty. Ryan answered every question the same way he had answered every question in the airport, directly, without performance, saying the true thing rather than the impressive thing, because he had learned the hard way that impressive things and true things were often not the same thing, and that people with the judgment of Henderson could tell the difference immediately. At the end, Henderson leaned back in his chair and looked at Ryan with the measured attention of a man who made assessments for a living. "You're not what I expected," Henderson said. "What did you expect? Someone who would spend this interview trying to recover from missing the first one, overcompensating, over-explaining." A pause. "You didn't do that. It's done. There's nothing to recover from. There's only what I can show you today." Henderson looked at him for a long moment. "Marcus told me you've been running lean for 3 years. Single father contract work, building something back from nothing. That's accurate. Most men in that position come in here desperate. You can smell it. They need the job too much to perform well in the room." Henderson straightened. "You don't seem desperate. I want the position. I believe I'm the right person for it. But I've learned that wanting something and needing it to the point where you can't function without it are 2 very different things." "When did you learn that?" Ryan thought about a kitchen at 5 in the morning, a gray sweatshirt, a lunch note about pretzels. 3 years ago, he said. "The hard way." Henderson nodded once. He extended his hand across the table. "We'll be in touch before the end of the week, Mr. Carter." Ryan shook it. He walked out of the building into December Chicago and called Emily before he reached the corner. She answered in one ring. "Well?" Henderson shook my hand at the end. A breath. "Ryan, I don't have confirmation yet." Henderson shook your hand. "It's a professional gesture." "Ryan?" Henderson shook your hand. He stood on the sidewalk in the cold and felt something move through him. Not quite triumph. Something quieter and more durable than triumph, and he let it. "Yeah," he said. "I think it went well." It went well. He could hear the smile in it, the barely contained satisfaction of someone who had believed in this outcome and was now watching it arrive. Call me when they call you. I will. And Ryan, you earned this. Not the airport. Not Henderson liking your story. You. What you know and how you think and who you are in a room under pressure. He was quiet for a moment. You don't know what I'm like in a room under pressure. I know what you're like in an airport under pressure. Same principle. He almost laughed. I'll call you. I'll be waiting. He flew home to Philadelphia that afternoon, picked Lucas up from Diane's before dinner, and sat across from his son at the kitchen table, eating pasta that Diane had sent over in a container with a note that said, "For when you land. Stop eating airport food. Love, D." Lucas twirled his fork. How did it go? I think it went well. Did you get the job? Not officially yet. Soon. Lucas nodded. He ate for a moment. Then, Dad. Yeah. Are we going to see Emily and Oliver for Christmas? Ryan looked at his son. He had not said anything about Christmas. The conversation they'd had in November had been about one thing at a time, and bringing Lucas' next visit and letting things develop at their own pace. He had been deliberate about not projecting too far ahead, because projecting too far ahead was how you turned something fragile and real into something pressurized and theoretical. Where did that come from? Ryan asked. Oliver texted me. Ryan set his fork down. Oliver texted you. We've been texting. Since when? Since Thanksgiving. Mom gave him my number. Or his mom did. I don't know which one. Lucas looked unbothered. He wanted to tell me about a shark. Ryan stared at his son. He texted you about a shark. A shark has to keep moving or it dies. He thought I'd want to know. He told me the same thing in October. He tells everyone, Lucas said. He's really interested in sharks right now. Last week he texted me about the bite force of a great white. It was a lot of numbers. Ryan picked his fork back up. He was not sure whether to be moved or simply delighted. He settled for both. He asked if we were doing anything for Christmas. Lucas continued. I said I didn't know. He said he hoped we could come to Cincinnati because he wants to show me his room and the park where his mom takes him, and also a specific tree that fell down in a storm that he thinks looks like a dinosaur. A tree that looks like a dinosaur. He sent me a picture. It kind of does. Ryan looked at his son, this 8-year-old boy, who had spent 3 years being careful about what he asked for, and had just quietly and entirely on his own started a friendship with a 6-year-old boy in another city, and felt something in his chest expand past its usual capacity. I'll talk to Emily, Ryan said. Lucas's face did not perform satisfaction. He just nodded like a man who has put forward a reasonable proposal and is content to let it proceed through proper channels. Okay, he said. They finished dinner. Ryan washed the dishes. He called Emily after Lucas was in bed. Our sons are texting each other, Ryan said without preamble. I know. Not even a pause. You know. Oliver asked me to text him your number. He said he needed to tell Lucas about the shark. I said that was Ryan's decision, not mine, and Oliver said you'd say yes, so I asked you, except I didn't ask you. You had Oliver text Lucas directly. Oliver had Oliver text Lucas directly. I just didn't stop it. Emily. He really wanted to tell someone about the shark, Ryan. He'd already told me 4 times. Ryan leaned against the counter. Lucas wants to come for Christmas. Silence. Not the uncertain kind. The kind that comes before something. Oliver asked him, Emily said. I know. Oliver asked him without asking me first. I know. I'm sorry. I should have... Emily. He said her name the way he had learned to say it, with enough weight to mean stop and enough warmth to mean it's okay. Do you want us to come? A breath. Yes. Then we'll come. Ryan, that's a big step. It is. The boys' meeting, Christmas, that's not... One thing at a time. She was quiet. You said that to me in October. It's still true. It doesn't mean nothing moves. It means we move one real thing at a time, and we're honest about what each thing is. And what is this? He looked at the ceiling. This is me telling you that my son wants to meet your son. And that I want to spend Christmas somewhere that doesn't feel like a modified version of grief management. She was very still on the line. Is that what it's been, grief management? Not this year. This year it's been real. But the two before, yes. I cooked a big meal, and I bought the right presents, and I made it work, and I was proud of that. But it was maintenance, not life, she breathed. I know exactly what you mean. I know you do. Okay, she said. Okay? Christmas in Cincinnati. Christmas in Cincinnati. A small pause. The boys are going to be chaos together. Absolute chaos. Oliver's going to show Lucas the dinosaur tree within the first 20 minutes. Lucas is going to want to go back the next day. She laughed. The 5th he had stopped counting at some point in November, which was its own kind of answer. The offer letter from Ardent Solutions arrived by email on Friday morning. Ryan read it twice at the kitchen table before Lucas was awake in the specific early morning quiet that had once felt like loneliness, and had gradually, without his fully noticing, become something more like peace. Senior Operations Analyst. The title. The salary, which was more than he had made in any single year of his life. Full benefits. Start date in January. Henderson's signature at the bottom of the attached contract. He sat with it for a long time. He thought about Sarah. He always thought about Sarah when something significant happened, but the quality of those thoughts had changed over 3 years. Less the raw, amputated quality of the early days, more like telling someone something you knew they'd want to hear. Like sending news to someone you loved, who happened to be somewhere you couldn't reach. I got it, he thought. I finally got it. And underneath that quieter, I have someone to call. He called Emily. She cried. Briefly, without making it about the crying. Just a sharp exhale, and then a silence, and then her voice slightly rougher than usual. I knew it. You didn't know. I absolutely knew it, from the airport. I watched you with Oliver, and I thought that's a man who is about to start the life he was supposed to have. He had no response to that. I'm proud of you, she said, directly without decoration. Thank you. Does Lucas know? He's still asleep. Wake him up. It's 6:30. Ryan, wake your son up and tell him. He went to Lucas's room, stood in this doorway. Lucas was in the same sprawling arms-wide configuration as every morning. The gray sweatshirt was on the pillow next to him, not being worn, just present the way a person keeps a thing they love close without needing to explain why. Ryan crossed to the bed and sat on the edge. Lucas. His son opened one eye. Dad, it's early. I know. I wanted to tell you something. Both eyes opened. Something in Ryan's voice had communicated significance, and Lucas, who had learned to listen for significance in his father's voice, the way sailors listen for weather, came awake fully and waited. I got the job. Lucas sat up. He looked at his father for a moment with those careful, deep eyes. Then he leaned forward and wrapped both arms around Ryan's neck, the way he had not done since he was very small, fully without reservation, the way children hold on before they learn to be strategic about it. Ryan held on. He pressed one hand to the back of his son's head, and he held on, and he breathed, and he did not say anything, because there was nothing to say that the holding didn't already contain. After a moment, Lucas pulled back. He wiped his eye quickly with the back of his wrist, with the practiced speed of a boy who didn't want to be seen doing it. Ryan pretended not to notice. Can I tell Oliver? Lucas asked. Yes. Now. It's 6:30 in the morning. Oh. A pause. After breakfast. After breakfast. Lucas looked at the sweatshirt on the pillow. Then he looked at Ryan. Mom would have been really happy, he said. Ryan's throat tightened. Yeah, bud, she would have been. She always said you were the smartest person she knew, and you just needed the right door. Ryan looked at his son. She said that, all the time, when you weren't listening. Lucas picked up the sweatshirt, held it in his lap. I think she'd also like Emily. Ryan breathed slowly. I think so too. She likes people who say true things, Mom always said most people just say easy things. Emily says true things. I know. Oliver says she does too. He set the sweatshirt down with the careful reverence of someone replacing something precious. He said she cried when she found out you got the job. Ryan stared at his son. He texted you this morning. He texted me when you were calling his mom. He said she was crying but in a good way, and that you got a job, and that he hopes we're still coming for Christmas. Are you two texting right now? He's up early. He gets up early. Ryan put his hand over his face briefly. Lucas looked completely untroubled. Are we still coming? He asked. Yes, we're still coming. Lucas nodded. Okay. He looked at the sweatshirt one more time. Dad? Yeah. I'm really glad you stopped for Oliver. Ryan looked at his son. This boy who had grown up faster than any child should have to, who monitored his father's sleep and kept a sweatshirt on his pillow and texted a 6-year-old about sharks at 6:30 in the morning, who had become in the absence of enough scaffolding something more extraordinary than Ryan had known how to pray for. Me too, Ryan said. More than I can say. Christmas in Cincinnati was loud in the way that houses are loud when children have decided that volume is celebration. Ryan and Lucas arrived on the 23rd. Oliver met them at the door in a sweater with a reindeer on it that he had clearly put on voluntarily, which Emily confirmed with a quiet look of bewildered gratitude directed at Ryan. The two boys stood on the porch for the first 3 seconds of meeting with the cautious assessment of people who have been told good things about each other and are now verifying the reports. Then Oliver said, "Do you want to see the dinosaur tree?" And Lucas said, "Yes." And that was the end of the assessment. They were gone into the backyard in 40 seconds. Emily calling after them, something about coats that was received and immediately deprioritized. And Ryan stood in the doorway of Emily's house with his bag in his hand, and she was standing in the hallway looking at him with an expression that was equal parts exhausted and full. "Welcome," she said. He stepped inside. "Your house smells like cinnamon. Oliver made cookies this morning. He made approximately 70 cookies. I don't know where he thought they would go. We'll figure it out." She took his coat. He looked around the house he had visited once before in November, now layered with Christmas in the practical way of single parents, who do Christmas with intention and without excess. Lights on the mantel. A tree in the corner with ornaments that had the history of being collected over years, not bought as a set. A stocking with Oliver's name on it, in the kind of needlepoint that suggested a grandmother's hands. One new stocking. Ryan almost missed it, then didn't. Hanging at the end of the row, Lucas's name, in the same needlepoint style. He looked at Emily. She met his eyes and didn't look away. "My mother made it," she said. "She makes one for everyone who's coming. I told her Lucas was coming. She made one." A pause. "She also made one for you. It's in the box. I wasn't sure if that was—" "It's right," he said. She exhaled. "Okay. It's exactly right." She looked at the fireplace. "I didn't know how you'd feel, Emily." He said it with the weight it had accumulated over 2 months of phone calls, and one airport, and one Cincinnati afternoon, and every honest thing said between them in between. "When have I made you feel like you had to second-guess what's right?" She turned back to him. "Never," she said. "That's why I did it." He crossed the room. He stood in front of her close enough that the distance was a decision and not an accident. He had not been this close to anyone in 3 years and 2 months, in the specific way that proximity is a declaration. She looked up at him. "Hi," she said. "Hi. You drove 400 miles. Little under. Close enough." He reached out and tucked a piece of hair back from her face, the simple, deliberate gesture of a man who has decided that the careful distance has served its purpose, and that what is real deserves to be treated as real. She held very still. "Ryan." "Yeah, I'm not going to pretend this isn't significant. I'm not asking you to. I haven't done this since James. I know. I'm scared. So am I." She looked at him. "You don't seem scared." "I'm terrified," he said. "I'm also certain. Both things are true at the same time." She searched his face. How are you certain? I thought about a morning in an airport when a small hand grabbed his sleeve. He thought about the gate closing and the choice that hadn't felt like a choice. He thought about coffee in a food court and a notebook full of letters and a boy who tied his shoe and showed him the knot held. He thought about phone calls at 7:40 on a Tuesday and Thursday interviews, and a diner where two people ordered pancakes, and one of them meant it, and the other one meant something else entirely, and both of them were right. Because I spent 3 years making sure I couldn't be wrong about anything, he said. And this is the first thing in 3 years that I'm completely willing to be wrong about. That's not recklessness. That's the opposite of recklessness. That's knowing the difference between risk and the right thing. Her eyes were bright. You sound very sure of yourself. I'm sure of you. The myself part I'm still working on. She laughed. And it was different from the airport laugh, and different from the diner laugh, and different from all the phone call laughs. It was the laugh of a woman standing inside her own life in her own house at Christmas, not performing anything for anyone. Just real. Just here. He kissed her. Brief. Certain. The kind of kiss that doesn't try to be more than it is, that is exactly what it intends to be, and nothing performed about it. When he stepped back, she looked at him with color in her face and said nothing. He said nothing either. Outside, they could hear the boys. Oliver's narration floating through the window at a volume that suggested the dinosaur tree was receiving a very thorough introduction. Lucas's voice asking questions with the steady curiosity of someone who takes new information seriously. They're going to be fine, Ryan said. They already are. She stepped back and wiped her eye in the same quick wrist way Lucas did, and Ryan recognized this immediately. The inherited motion, the children who had learned to feel things deeply and move through them with speed, so no one would worry, and felt the recognition land somewhere essential. Come on, she said. Let's go see the dinosaur tree. They went out through the back door into the December cold, and Oliver looked up from his position beside the fallen tree with the expression of a foreman whose crew has finally arrived. I was telling Lucas about the neck, Oliver said. See how the branch is the neck. Ryan studied the fallen tree with appropriate gravity. I see it. Lucas stood beside Oliver with his hands in his pockets, and he looked at Ryan with the quiet assessing look that meant he had been thinking. It does look like a dinosaur, Lucas said. I told you, Oliver said. What kind? Oliver looked at the tree with the authority of someone who has considered this question at length and arrived at a definitive answer. A brachiosaurus, because of the neck. Long neck, Lucas agreed. And because it's big. T-Rexes are big, but this is bigger. A T-Rex would be the stump. Oliver stared at Lucas. Something happened in his face. The recognition of a person who has just encountered someone operating on the same frequency. Yes, Oliver said with great conviction. The stump is the T-Rex. Lucas nodded. They both turned to study the stump. Ryan looked at Emily. She was watching her son with her arms crossed against the cold, and her face had that open layered quality. He had come to know the complicated love of a parent, watching something good happen, mixed with something she hadn't let herself hope for, and was now navigating carefully. Hey, Ryan said quietly. She looked at him. It's going to be okay. She looked back at the boys. I know, she said. I mean all of it, not just today. She was quiet for a moment. I know that too, she said finally. That's the part I'm learning to let myself believe. They stayed out for 20 minutes while the temperature dropped and Oliver gave a comprehensive tour of the backyard, which included the stump, the tree, a specific corner where a robin had nested the previous spring, and a patch of dirt that was according to Oliver the best place in the whole yard, for no reason he could articulate other than that it felt right. Lucas listened to all of it. He asked good questions. He did not try to one-up or redirect or impose his own preferences over Oliver's expertise. He simply listened and engaged, and was present in the way that certain children are present fully without partition. And Ryan watched this, and felt the pride of it move through him clean and quiet. He had done something right. He wasn't sure exactly when or exactly what, but he had done something right. Inside they made dinner together. The four of them in a kitchen that was suddenly the right size for this exact number of people. Oliver stood on a step stool to stir something with the concentration of a surgeon. Lucas set the table with the practiced efficiency of a boy who had been doing this job for years. Emily moved through the kitchen with the easy authority of someone in her own space, handing things and directing without stress. Ryan washed the dishes as they went. He had positioned himself at the sink specifically, not because it was the most useful place, but because from the sink he could see all three of them at once. Oliver on his stool, Lucas at the table, Emily at the stove. He stood there with his hands in warm water, and he looked at the three of them, and the kitchen was full of sound. Oliver's narration, Lucas's occasional interjection, Emily's laughter, and something happened inside Ryan Carter's chest that was not dramatic, not sudden, not the lightning strike moment of stories. It was quiet. It was the particular quiet of a man who has been carrying something heavy for a very long time and has just set it down, not because anyone told him to, not because the weight was finally taken from him, but because he arrived somewhere that felt safe enough to put it down on his own. He had not known this was possible. He had not let himself know. He did the dishes. He let the warmth of the water run over his hands. He watched his son laugh at something Oliver said. He watched Emily look up and find him across the kitchen and hold the look for one full second, not with any performance in it. Just the quiet acknowledgement of two people who had agreed in airports and phone calls and park benches and kitchen tables that what was real was worth the risk of being real. After dinner. After Oliver had eaten 3 of his own cookies with the satisfaction of a man sampling his own craft, after Lucas had accepted a 4th cookie on the sound logic that refusing would be impolite after the dishes were done, and the kitchen was quiet again, and the boys had retreated to Oliver's room with the specific energy of 2 children who have found their frequency and intend to operate on it until sleep intervenes. Ryan and Emily sat on the couch in the living room with the Christmas lights on and the rest of the house dark, not talking, just there. After a while, Emily said, "My mother is going to ask me about you the moment she calls tomorrow morning." "What will you tell her?" "The truth. Which is," she looked at the lights on the tree, "that I met him in an airport, that he stopped for Oliver when he didn't have to, that he is the most honest person I've talked to since James, that my son texts his son about sharks and dinosaur trees, and I have somehow stopped being terrified about what that means and started being grateful for it." Ryan looked at her. "That's a good truth." "It's the whole one." He reached over and took her hand. She let him. They sat in the quiet with the lights on, and their children talking in the next room, and the whole long year behind them. The airport, the rain, the delayed flights, and the food court, and the $60 economy lot parking, and the phone calls, and the Cincinnati afternoon, and the Henderson handshake, and the offer letter, and the stocking with his son's name on it, that a woman's mother had made without being asked, and none of it resolved into a single clear lesson the way stories are supposed to resolve. It was just a year in which a man had chosen to stop when every practical thing in his life said to keep walking. And everything that followed had followed from that. From the hallway, Oliver's voice carried through the quiet house explaining something to Lucas with the full force of his 6-year-old authority, probably about sharks, probably with statistics. Lucas's voice lower, asking a question. Oliver answering at length. Emily turned toward the sound and smiled the smile that wasn't performed for anyone. The private one. The one he had first seen in the airport, when the terror had finally passed and relief had moved in behind it. Ryan watched her. He thought about a morning alarm at 4:47, a broken shoelace, a missed flight, a small hand on his sleeve in a crowded corridor. I thought about every morning of the 3 years before the careful, dutiful, loving construction of a life that functioned, and about how functioning is not the same as living, and how a person can be so busy building the scaffolding that they forget what the scaffolding is supposed to hold up. He thought about Sarah saying, "You have more love than one person can use up. Don't let it go to waste." He looked at Emily. He looked toward the hallway where his son was laughing at something Oliver had said. The real laugh, the unguarded one that Ryan lived for and didn't hear often enough. He had not wasted it. He had been carrying it. All of it intact, through every early morning and every late night and every grief-adjacent holiday and every lunch note about pretzels, and every bathroom mirror rehearsal, and every careful, dutiful scaffolding day. He had been carrying it, waiting without knowing. He was waiting for somewhere it was safe to put it down and let it be what it was. Which was love. Still whole. Still large enough. Still exactly what it had always been. Just finally, after 3 years and 2 months and 1 missed flight, arriving where it was meant to go. Ryan Carter had lost a flight on a rainy morning and found something he had forgotten was still possible. And the man who had once believed that his best days were standing behind him now understood with the bone-deep certainty of someone who has stopped running long enough to look at where he actually is, that the best days were not behind him at all. They were here. They had been building toward here all along, and here it turned out was exactly where he was supposed to be.